Boys. So, today is a very beautiful Saturday afternoon in Bangkok. This is my view right now. I'll switch the camera just to show you what I'm looking at. So, yeah, I felt compelled to record a more like video essay type of piece of content about like the topic around fear when it comes to cold approach, because if we really boil it down to its core essence, the reason why people don't like try cold approach even though they want to, including myself at one point in time, is because of fear. And fear is something that is innately built into like the human experience, so you can't really avoid it. I think a lot of the times people, including myself, we try to prepare ourselves in a way that eradicates fear before we think about taking action, right? We want to calm our nerves, take a few deep breaths, meditate, bring ourselves to an equilibrium, or like a calm homeostatic level where our heart rate isn't beating really fast, and and we feel, sorry, I think there was like a little bug on my foot. And yeah, we essentially want to get to that point where we feel calm and collected, especially before something like an approach, right? And especially before your first approach. Everybody knows, who's done an approach knows that that first approach is incredibly scary. And yeah, so fear is a natural part of the human experience, so trying to eradicate it isn't useful, or at least trying to eradicate all of it isn't useful. But of course you can break it down, right? You can reduce the amount of fear that you experience based on facing it time and time again. But it's interesting because if you think about the fact that it is part of the human experience, then I think, if you think about that, let's say, more deeply, then maybe it shows that, like, a lot of the time, if you're scared of doing something, then it probably means you should do it. If you are really scared of doing something, instead of thinking about it like, oh, I'm afraid, therefore that's a signal that I should step away, then chances are you probably should do the complete opposite and run straight towards it. And run straight towards it with a lot of conviction, because I think facing fears, it's great if you face them, even if you face them with half a heart, but I think over time you want to get to that point where you face your fears head on, like a head-on collision, and you don't really think too much about any potential ramifications, whatever those are. And to be fair, a lot of the time the ramifications that we make up in our head, like the fear of the fear, as in, I'm afraid to do this because I'm afraid that it will lead to XYZ, like 9 times out of 10 that secondary fear is just the bruising of the ego. And which makes sense, because we want to protect our ego, right? We want to project a certain persona to ourselves and to the outside world. And yeah, it's a survival mechanism, although I don't quite understand why it's a survival mechanism, because if you think about it, that fear of bruising your ego, it holds a lot of people back from doing things that they want to do. And it's not just about cold approach. It's about starting a business they want to pursue, taking a new career path, making new friends, moving to a new city, restarting their life. We've all faced these crossroads where deep down inside we know that there's something we want to do and we don't do it, and we allow that fear to paralyze us. And yeah, it's like that's a depressing reality, right? I think I heard somebody describe it as people living in this quiet state of desperation, right? Where on the outside they look fine, they seem pretty content with their lives, but many times deep down inside they feel trapped, or they just feel like they haven't really accomplished what they wanted to accomplish. Not because they're not capable, but because they're afraid. And again, like I said, it's that ego, it's that fear of judgment, of what other people will think, what other people will say, especially if you fail, right? If you fail and it doesn't go according to plan, whatever that means, then yeah, you start to, I don't know, it's a very daunting reality, I guess. Not even reality, it's a daunting prospect, right? Of course, this is all in our heads and you have no idea what's actually going to happen. But if, let's say, the worst case scenario happens, then that's essentially what we're trying to avoid. So it feels like the end of the world. Which is funny because, I like to always think about the first approach I ever did last year in September. And it's, I always think about the knot in my stomach, like the visceral fear, anxiety, nervousness that was literally coursing through my stomach, my veins, my heartbeat. And it was a lot, right? It was intense. And it's just funny to think that obviously a year has passed and I've probably done like 900 approaches, and the difference between how I felt on the first approach compared to now is massive. And sure, I still get the fear, but now I just interpret the fear a little bit differently. And I will admit, there are days where I'm still afraid to go in for an approach and I still bail, and I'm not immune to the fear. That's why I made the point earlier that I don't want to sit here and say that you can eradicate fear, because I don't think you really can. I think it serves its purpose. I think the difference is just shifting your mentality towards it. And I think ultimately, I guess the larger point behind why we should face our fears is because you're only here for one life, man. Like, I'm looking out at this very nice lake, this beautiful view with the skyscrapers. I'm in Thailand, Bangkok, enjoying my travels, meeting new people, experiencing a different culture. And it's awesome, right? And I'm very blessed and privileged to be able to come here. I know a lot of people aren't. But yeah, it's like, you only live once, so what's the point of like playing it safe? It just doesn't make any sense. And none of it even really matters because, yeah, we're all gonna die, and, we're like this little speck of dust when you think about the grandness of, the earth and the universe and eternity. So, like, what the fuck is the point of just sitting around and like being scared or worrying so much, and not just taking a chance? Because if you fail, it's like, whatever, like the worst that would happen, like if you think about it, if we take this down to the nth degree or just like into infinity, the worst that can happen is you die. And like, what are the chances you're going to do something like that, right? Unless you want to be one of those guys who, has an extreme thrill for adventure and risk taking. I don't know, maybe you want to jump off a plane, do some skydiving, or maybe free solo rock climbing, like that guy. What was his name? Is it Alex Horno? That guy who does rock climbing without ropes. That's a crazy guy. Obviously that's like an intense version of facing your fears, but the point is universal, right? It still applies, which is often the worst case scenario isn't that bad, and even if it is that bad, so what? So yeah, I hope that's of use. I mean, this wasn't even planned. I was just thinking about, fear and, where I've gotten up to now. Because if I'd allowed, many fears to stop me from doing what I wanted to do, especially in the past like 2 years, then I wouldn't be here where I'm at right now. And not just here physically in this country, I mean like mentally. Like the resilience and the confidence to just say fuck it and go for it, and to trust in myself and believe in myself. I mean, that's the confrontation of that fear, like me confronting my fears, like that has just completely transformed the way that I walk and the way I talk and the way I carry myself. And it's pretty trippy. I always talk about this. I guess it's kind of happened really soon, so to me it's all still very new. Even the idea of making a YouTube channel and like documenting my journey. I mean, I could have never imagined doing something like that a year ago or 2 years ago. So yeah, that alone, amongst other developments, is just completely shifted the way that I view everything. And yeah, so yeah, it's funny because in a way it's scary. It's scary to think about the alternative path I could have taken, where I didn't take those risks, because then I'll just be stuck where I was before, and I didn't like where I was before, you know. And so, and it's fun. It's like I always wonder, you know, why do some people take action whilst others don't? And I don't really. I mean, I've spent time trying to think of what the answer to that question is, but it's really impossible because we're all at different stages in life. We all have different predispositions. We've all been brought up in different environments. We all live in different places. So, you know, we all have different, let's say, limitations and forces that might work for or against us. But I don't know. I feel like if you're someone watching this kind of content, then I think, you know, the normal rules of life and the normal rules of engagement don't apply to people that watch this content, because I think people that watch this content, for the most part, are people that have a burning desire to change, right? And they have hope and they see a way out, but there's just like a roadblock, like a mental roadblock that prevents them from taking that first step and then staying consistent with it. Because I'm sure maybe a lot of guys have taken that first step, and then maybe it didn't go well, or maybe it didn't go according to plan, and they were severely humbled. And again, that could be cold approach, that could be business, that could be moving to a new place, that could be trying to make a new friend, whatever the case might be. I'm sure there are examples where guys haven't had a great first experience when they've, you know, gone out onto the ledge, or gone out to the edge of the mountain and, you know, taken a step. But, you know, either way, if you can eat that humble pie and continue moving forward like I did when I started Approach, then yeah, I think it can pay off eventually, right? And I think another big fear is like the fear of thinking that it won't work for you, you know, especially with Cold Approach. You know, a lot of guys wonder, okay, it works for this person, it works for that person, but will it work for me? Will it work for me as somebody who's, I don't know, add whatever label you want to put on yourself, right? I'm too nerdy, I'm too skinny, I'm too big, I'm too black, I'm too white, I'm too yellow, I'm too purple. I'm not muscle maxed, I'm not money maxed, I'm not the most charismatic person, I'm too introverted, I don't live in this type of country, all the women in this country are like this, you know, I have this kind of accent, you know, I come from this kind of family background. Like, there's all sorts of, you know, not excuses. I mean, they are excuses, but I think they're valid because, you know, I can sympathize with that point of view, because we've all been there. You know, we've all been conditioned to think of ourselves in a certain way, and that way, you know, it makes us feel as if we're not worthy or we're not capable of doing certain things, and so therefore we assume that the chance of success for someone like us or someone like me or someone like you will be low, right? So we see somebody on the internet post videos of them approaching and getting dates and doing XYZ, but then we immediately compare ourselves and go, yeah, but it's easy for you to say, but you know, I have this ailment about me, I have this weakness or shortcoming that prevents me from getting your results. But I don't know, like, I guess I have two, let's say, rebuttals to that point of view, which is, one, you can always find an example of someone who fits the description or fits your description, but they were able to do what you're doing, or they've been able to find success in what you want to find success in. And so is it really a valid excuse if there's an example, a living example of someone out there? Now, that living example might not be the majority of people, but the fact that somebody like that exists, I think it completely disproves your assumption, right? And then the second point is, how would you really know if you haven't really tried, if you haven't really tried properly, you know? Because I think it was Alex Hormozi, there was a clip he posted, and he talked about how, you know, people will see a video on YouTube, or they'll read a book and they'll be inspired to change, and maybe they do a few reps, maybe they, you know, if it's a business, maybe they start a website and do a bit of client outreach, and then they give up after a couple of attempts, and then they say this doesn't work. And it's like, I mean, really? Did it not work, or did it just not work because you didn't stick at it long enough? And of course, it's interesting, right? Because sometimes you get cases where people start something, and then they find success in, I don't know, 2 weeks, right? I'm sure there's guys out there who have tried cold approach, and they probably found a girlfriend in like a week, right? Now you could say it's lucky, or maybe they were further along in their, let's say, personal growth than somebody else who might be further back and therefore take longer to yield results. But the point is, it's funny, right? Like the timing of success is very unpredictable, and I think we fear that it will never happen for us because we actually don't know when it will happen, right? You don't know which girl's gonna like you. You don't know which one's gonna be receptive to your approach. You don't know when, you'll finally be able to make a date materialize. You don't know when you'll finally have a happy ending. You don't know when you'll ever get that dream job or career. Like, you just don't know, right? So all you can really do is like trust in the process and put yourself out there and keep going. But it's fucking hard. It's hard because there will always be like forces against you, both your own forces, because I think most of the time we're our worst enemy when it comes to making progress. Like, we stop ourselves, we make the excuses, we put these imaginary mental roadblocks, and then essentially we'll just project that onto the external world. We'll say, oh yeah, I can't do it because the world will judge me, and the world will think this, and the world will think that. But I don't know, I think the world is just a reflection of how you feel about yourself. So the real work is to think about why you don't think you're going to be successful, and have that, long, honest, and hard conversation. But yeah, anyway, that's it. I don't have anything else to say really. The sun is absolutely burning me, but I need it because it's November in England, and I'm not going to get sun like this at this time of year for a minute, so I might as well bask in it and absorb all of the rays I can get without burning my retinas. But either way, the lighting was good for the video, so I ain't complaining. But anyway, hopefully that was somewhat useful. And yeah, peace out.